Morning to those who are in Indian time zone. Good afternoon and good evening to everyone. We'll wait for 5 more minutes for participants to join and then we'll start. I'm Nupur Sharma, Security Analyst at SCTL, and I'll be the co-organizer of this webinar. Thank you.
Uh, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. I think we can start. Um, I think you can see my screen, right? So, welcome everybody to this session on third-party data risks. So, we are going to cover the third-party aspects and the data security and privacy risks, and how the two of the best security tools, SOC 2 and ISO IEC, the 27xxx standards, right, um, may be used in an integrated approach. That's the theme of today. And we can ask, you can ask questions on the chat in the Q&A session. In between, we may have some polls, right, so that uh, we are all participating in the whole discussion. And this is a two-way session. This is kept for, of course, asking doubts and clarifications and whatever thoughts you may have. So please feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A, and after that, also after the session, we'll have specific answers to specific questions that you may have. So this is going to be our agenda: introduction, context, SOC 2 versus the ISO 27000 standard, the privacy compliance using SOC 2 and ISO IC 27701, and privacy, of course. So that's a quick introduction about us. So that was our company introduction, and this is my background. I'm an MBA, I'm a CPA. I've been in the security domain for almost 19 years, since the year 2002. And I have some of the certifications which I mentioned in my profile. I've also been a contributor to the profession, earlier a volunteer for ISACA for almost 7 years for the journal, and also speaker in some of the ISACA forums. And my expertise is across the security domains in terms of risk management, cloud security, privacy, um, the network security, doing architecture design, even industrial cyber security covering IEC 62443, IoT, and other aspects. Many of you know me personally, so I would like to not talk more on this. And you, Nupur, my colleague, has already introduced herself. So let's get on to the topic. These are some of our global customers. The top three names are well known. They are household names. The lower three are mostly cloud platforms. They were startups. Some of them are still startups, but they have hundreds of employees. We have been auditing them for several years now. We have two main offices. One is Denver, Colorado, and one in Mumbai. And we have clients across the globe today, in Asia Pacific, in Middle East, and Europe, as well as America, North America. I know some of the attendees today are joining from across the globe, including Japan, Asia Pacific, Middle East, etc. I welcome all of them to have taken their time to join this session, and I hope this is going to be fruitful for everybody. So let's look at the context of today's first, starting with increasing cybercrimes. Today, the cybercrime market is estimated to be about $10.5 trillion, which is almost one-fourth of the Indian GDP and almost half of the US GDP in terms of the value. And since the topic of today's session is on data security, data breaches, about 63% of all data breaches are directly linked to third parties, which is going to be our focus today. Out of these, the entire data breaches, about 80% of all breaches have personal or PII data. So that's where the privacy aspect comes into the picture. We have seen in the news every day that such and such institution or the application has been hacked and data has been lost. We have seen big names, Domino's and Mobiwick and several big names. The data breaches are happening, and we are going to see what I mean some of those aspects in terms of compliance today. We are not going into the technical details as to why that data breach happened, but of course, at a high level, we are going to speak about some of those compliance mandates. There has been a 140% increase in data breach notifications from year-on-year basis, which is from 2019 calendar year to the 2020 calendar year, and we are seeing um, this trend increasing every year. Right? The number of data breaches going increasing, the cost per data breach is increasing, and of course, third parties are getting more and more involved in the data breach factor. There's an increasing cloud factor, um, which is now estimated to be $1 trillion by 2024. And 93% of the enterprises already have a multi-cloud strategy. Now, coming to the third-party data risks and data risk management. So, Gartner in its report states that the entire management of third-party risks in the entire life cycle of those third parties, 73% of the efforts are only devoted right in the first year. So if you're onboarding a new vendor, which may have data security implications, you would only look at their controls in the first year when you onboard the data, onboard the vendor, right? So only then you will do the evaluation. After the evaluation is done on a year-to-year basis or periodic basis, that is not done. Only 27% of the effort is allocated to the data security or third-party risks across the vendor lifecycle, right? Suppose we have an API with the data and you are having a to and fro data flow between the companies. So you will only look at the data security risks in the first year. 73% of the efforts only goes in the first time when you onboard that vendor. Right? So this is what Gartner states. Also, 75% of the vendors pass the security questionnaires with no exceptions, claiming perfect compliance to requirements. So if you typically a company, when they onboard a new vendor, they will send a questionnaire and everything is tick mark, yes, 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 and the vendor is onboarded. That is what is happening in the industry today. And that is why we see so many data breaches and so many data risks. Coming to third-party risk assessment staffing. So 87% of the organizations are inadequately staffed for doing third-party data risk management or even third-party risk management staffing. So this is just left to a few people. And I think we have a next slide on the number of people also. No, so average was about, in one of the reports I read, average was only 1 or 2 people in the entire companies of thousands of employees and hundreds of vendors doing the third party risk management across the all the third parties. And this is a concern I've seen in our audits that we have done to companies also, that the third party risk assessment is usually neglected because the third party vendors are assessed by an independent unit of the companies who only have a checkbox whether they have internal compliance questionnaire done or they have a ISO 27001 checkbox or a SOC2 checkbox. The detailed evaluation of the controls are not done. Typically, not only in small organizations, but this is lacking even in large organizations, right? That the detailed security assessment, detailed data security risk management is not being currently done adequately. Another figures I have is 82% of the organizations use third parties for their data processing, right? Another figure is only 30% of organizations respond to data subject rights in terms of GDPR compliances within 2 days. Rest everything they take more than 1 week or take more than even 30 days to respond to data subject rights. Some more facts and figures. Um, in terms of processing, this is sourced from the IAPP global report, which states that 94% of the organizations rely only on assurance in the contract. So they don't even have a questionnaire, they don't even have any audits done. 94% of the companies only rely on the SLAs and the contracts that you will do these data security measures, and that's it. There's no internal audits, there's no external audits, right? And this is what is the current state of affairs. 63% require completion of questionnaires. Only 63% only require completion of questionnaires as to what are their security practices, and they are taken at face value. 49% require documentation of third-party audit. Only 49%. And 39% rely on assurances in communication with processes. 28% require certification of proof of adherence to the code of conduct. And only 23% conduct on-site audits themselves. The other 3% are other steps. So drilling down to certification audits, which is our scope of discussion today, right? So 35% again out of those rely on internal audits, internal assessments, and 27% rely on their PCI audits, which are only basically for the credit card holder data. It doesn't talk of the entire data security risks or the data which the third party may be processing. PCI is only for the card holder data. It does not talk about the confidential or other data which is being processed by the third party. So PCI may not be entirely in scope, though it is one of the tools, but in my opinion, it's only on the cardholder data. So the entire data flow, the entire data security concepts are not covered in the PCI. It's a limited scope. So 25% of these certification audits are relying on the ISO 27001 standard or certificate, and 22% relying on the SOC2 for privacy. This is why it's talking of privacy, because the source is IAPP, which is the International Association of Privacy Professionals. So these are some of the data, and because our subject today is across the data, which is data security and privacy, and 80% of all those data breaches have PII data or personal data, and so we are focusing on the security and privacy both together. And of course, that is the reason we have taken the sourcing from IAPP, which talks about the uh, privacy aspects involved in every data breach. So out of those certifications and the organizations which they assessed from the sample size, IIPB states that only 11% of these organizations, right, insisted on either the 27001 or the SOC 2 for privacy out of the entire audits being conducted. And 4% relied on the NIST privacy framework, which is a new, which only came in 2020, last year, in the beginning of the last year. And about 6% rely on the 27701, which is a specific PEM standard, which we will see later. And 5% rely on the 27018, which is the attestation, the certification rather, for privacy or the PII data in the cloud environment. Trust Stack is another privacy certification, which is only counts about 3%. So if you see, even our subject today is SOC 2 and ISO 27x standards, and which is comprising of the majority of the certification audit requirements per se. And that's what we will see how they can be used more effectively in an integrated environment. So coming to the third-party data security compliance tools that we saw from the reports of IAPP and other industry best practices, we have seen that, of course, ISO certificate, which is across the 27,000 family I'm talking of, right, is a major requirement from whatever percentage we have. We are not disputing that, but till date, whatever companies are asking for, these two are the major requirements in terms of certifications. The ISO standard we will discuss today. We will discuss the SOC 2 standard, We will also quickly uh, briefly refer to the CCM and the C5 controls. We are not discussing them today because we have a specific webinar on the CCM and cloud security on August 5th, which we will talk to you later on. And we already looked at the PCI DSS, which is mainly for cardholder data and which is not a subject matter of discussion in our today's talk. Coming to the SOC reports, SOC reports have been used since long. We will see the history in the next slide. This has been used popularly for vendor risk compliance. The SOC 1 is also known as IAC 3402 in the European market, which reports on controls over financial data. The non-financial data comes under the SOC 2 or the IAC 3000, which uses the trust services criteria. The most updated one is 2017, and we use it for security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. And of course, SOC 2 can be used with CCM Cloud Security Alliance's CCM controls on the C5 controls to report on the cloud risks. This is a quick history, and the SOC reports were started being used in 1974. It was earlier known as SAS3, and there's a whole journey to SAS 44, SAS 70, Web Trust, SysTrust, trust services criteria, and then SSAE 16, and then the SOC 1, SOC 2, 3 reports which came in 2011, and the SOC for cybersecurity came in 2017, and SOC for supply chain came in 2020, which changed the definition of SOC reports also. And now SOC reports are usually, earlier they were for service organizations. Now they can be used for every organization. I think we'll have a quick break for a poll now, Nupur.
Yeah, let's have a quick poll now. Yeah. So is the poll question available? Can someone please let me know in the chat? Yeah, started. Can you see the second question?
So, Nupur, are we done with polls? Do we continue with the
Yeah,
session? Okay. So, I
yeah, we
think,
can move forward.
yeah, majority of everybody got right? 83, both of them were right in this case. And earlier also, right? What was the question? What was it? Majority of them got right? 76%, right? Okay, good. So, let's continue further with, yeah, okay. So, let's continue with our discussion. Uh, So let's come to now the ISO IEC 27000 standard, which started with 27001, earlier known as BS 7799, and later it was changed to ISO IEC 17799, and then known as the 27001, which we know as the most popular one. That's the history. This is the most updated one is 27001 2013, and which is a certifiable standard against this. This is what to our best of the knowledge today. This is the history and the background of the entire family, starting with 27,000, the whole family of standards. The certifiable standards for sector specific, other than 27,001, 27,001 is year certifiable. Other sector specific are the 27,010, 11, 17, which is for cloud security, 18, which is for privacy in the cloud, and 19, which is the for energy sector industrial cybersecurity controls. We will see some of them here. 18, which we discussed, sorry, 27,000. which is the updated in 2018, which is overview and vocabulary. The 27001, which is the system ISMS requirements. The 27002, which is the code of practice. The 27006, which is the for certification bodies. The 27011, which is for telecom. 17 is for cloud services. 18 is for the PII data in the cloud. And of course, 27019 is for the energy industry. Now let's look at how does the compare with the SOC 2 and the ISO standards. So the SOC 2 is based on the trust services criteria, which we saw the five major aspects covering processing integrity, sorry, security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. Whereas the ISO IEC is a certifiable standard for the information security management standards against its own framework. So the governance, SOC 2 is governed under the AICPA rules, and the US State Department grants the CPA firm a license. And also the PCOAB is the registering firm for all the listed entity audits, including SOC 1 and SOC 2 both. The ISO-IC is governed under the IF as MLA signatory, and certification bodies are within those accreditation bodies under the MLA signatories. SOC 2 is mostly used for oversight of the organization, vendor management, internal corporate governance and risk management, and of course the regulatory oversight, which is the Sarbanes-Oxley Act as a major thing. Of course, that's a major thing, but people use that for other compliances such as HIPAA, GDPR, which can be included in the existing SOC report. The purpose of ISMS is to for the management to establish and certify the ISMS, which is the main use and certified as a best practices in terms of security management. There are 300 points of focus in the SOC 2 against the 114 controls in the ISO IEC, which is the major difference. And the SOC covers, sorry, the ISO IEC covers the CIA, whereas the SOC covers the entire five aspects of the uh, whole framework. SOC 2 is a 100-page security white paper attested by an auditor, which starts with the description of controls and test of controls provided in the same report. So if you have seen any SOC 2 report, it's a 100-odd page, depending on, of course, the controls and the criteria reported. It can be more or less, but at least on an average, what we have seen is a 100-page odd report. Whereas ISO 27000 or the entire series is just a certificate without you knowing what is the statement of applicability. So your client who is looking at your certificate does not know what are the controls you have implemented if you're publishing your ISO IC report. 27000xxx certificate. There's no SOA goes to the client that what are your applicable controls, what the auditor has seen, what he has audited, whether there were any non-conformities. Of course, if there are major non-conformities, certificate cannot be issued or renewed. But if there are minor, the client does not know whether it's 10 or 50 minor non-conformities that you may have. But if you go in a SOC 2 report, every non-conformity has to be reported on. So it gives a more descriptive, elaborative view rather than just a limited view, which is given in the ISO IEC certificate. So attestation is provided for minimum 6 months and maximum 12 months. It's a continuous monitoring for a type 2 report. In the ISO IEC, we have a surveillance audit conducted every 12 months and recertified every 3 years. But there's no continuous monitoring of monthly controls or quarterly controls and review of all of the controls. So it has got a limited visibility and it has got a limited use in terms of actual knowing of what are the controls implemented. SOC 2 is aligned to the COSO risk management framework. When end-to-end activities are required from assessment to mitigation, the ISO IC standards rely on the principle of continuous improvement, although and earlier specific references were used for the PDCA cycle. in the new 27001 standard, we see that was missing. But however, it's implied that companies still use that as a PDCA cycle. SOC 2 can be, we can have additional frameworks such as the Cloud CCM or the C5 standard reported in the same SOC 2 report, and that leads to the Cloud Security Alliance's Star Level 2 compliance with the CCM4, which is the latest standard, and organizations are required to adapt to the new CCM4 before the end of this year. The 27xx standards have the specific 27017 and the 18 for the PII data in the cloud. Of course, if we have the entire suite of ISO standards, many of the areas are covered without, of course, the client knowing the description of the controls and the details of controls. Processing integrity in terms of SOC 2 is different, and the trust services criteria is different than the I of the CIA. So the I in the CIA talks of the entire backup storage as a whole, but processing integrity refers to a specific uh, data sets in the software report. Now let's see how the privacy compliance using SOC 2 reports we will see. Do we um,
Can we have a quick poll?
quick poll again? Okay.
Yeah. So the correct answer is ISO IEC 27017-2015. Majority got it right. So the correct answer is SOC 2. SOC 2 is based on the coastal risk framework. We can move forward.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Nupur. So let's come to our another topic, which is privacy. Now, quickly, the privacy has been in the news since the GDPR came into being, and of course, GDPR, CCPA, and the Indian data privacy bill is already in the in the discussion stage. And of course, after the Cambridge Analytica Facebook event, the event has gained more attention globally. People are looking at privacy, but we are still cautious. The EU safe harbor has failed. So is the privacy shield failed recently, and we have new laws coming up across the globe, and we will see a lot of traction rather, in terms of privacy in the days to come. And everybody in the industry is waiting for that to happen. And let's see when that takes place. Of course, it's in the foreseeable future. Companies are just talking about it, preparing internally. Of course, we are seeing the trend, but not as we would like to see, despite all of these privacy fines, which is 5 billion in case of the Cambridge Analytica issue for Facebook, and so many millions of dollars in all others. And recently, also, a hotel booking platform was fined, a well-known platform, for just delay in informing a breach, which is the 72 hours mandated under GDPR. They responded after that, and they were fined only for the delay. So we are going to see a lot of data breaches fines going up, and even in once the data breaches in India, the bill is passed, we're going to see a stronger and uh, more effective laws in place. We are already seeing what is the government stands against Twitter and MasterCard recently. And I think this is going to be a change of environment to all those who are used to the Indian Chalta environment. We'll have to have a focused environment in terms of compliance. The things of what is happening currently in the market will not be there. That's my thought, and that's my sincere hope that it should be done as soon as possible, so that the companies take the compliance in the right spirit, and not just for the sake of showing it on the paper we are compliant, and in actual sense they are not. So when we talk of description criteria in terms of the SOC 2, right, which is also has 50 points of focus within the framework, right, we have to describe the privacy controls within our entity. It's not that you call a SOC 2 auditor and say, no, I want to do privacy, and there are no controls in place. This is what is happening today. We get calls and emails from companies. So we want to do privacy audit. We want to cover SOC 2 for privacy. They have neither done a data flow analysis. They don't know where their data are stored. They have no description criteria made for privacy, and they want to call an auditor to just certify on the privacy, which does not happen. They have to do a description of controls. They have to see a data flow. They have to do a data DPIA. They have to use frameworks to do an internal risk assessment first, and then call for an auditor to audit, right? And this is happening not with small firms, with big firms also. I can't name anybody, but big firms are saying, sir, I want my entire office countries in India to be privacy certified. And they don't know where their data is lying. They have no, and for all the data sensitive scope. It is not a privacy policy that you made and you can become privacy compliant. That's not the case. You have to look at your entire, from the place where companies log in into your offices, visit your offices, your fingerprint records within your biometrics, coming to your personal records, coming to your third party vendors, coming to your customers, where the metadata is stored, the entire chain or the entire life cycle of all the data, right from your employees to your vendors to your third parties to your data in the backups, in the storage, everywhere. The entire life cycle of your data has to be looked at. We have to look at where the data is being processed, how it is coming in, where it is being processed, where it is being stored, in flat files, in everything, your DLP, whether you have the DLP protections in place at the network layer, at the client end layer. And you also need to look at all the compliance standards, whether HIPAA, GDPR, or CCPA are applicable to you, and report on that in detail before you can even look at auditing your privacy. It's not an easy subject. It's not security. So security, of course, is required, but in terms of privacy, it's not an easy topic that people think they just have a privacy policy on the website. They have a cookie policy, and they comply with privacy, and they want somebody to certify with SOC 2 or even the ISO 27701. It doesn't work like this, right? People are in the habit of buying certificates in India, but that does not work. And if they are doing that, they are going to take the law in their own hands. And of course, they are going to give declarations and misdeclarations to their compliance mandates, which they are going to have, which going to fall apart in at least one day. So coming to ISO IC 27701, which is the standard announced in 2019, also known as the privacy um, PIMS, privacy information. What is it called? I have to check. Privacy information management system. Sorry, and it assures the data subjects and the customers that PII data is managed responsibly. It integrates with the ISO 27001 ISMS standard, provides clear visibility to data management approaches with partners, helps to identify and prioritize manage risks throughout the data's lifecycle, and achieve compliance with data protection guidelines. And let's see how we can manage PII with 27701. This is the high level PIMS, information security, additional standard for the ISMS privacy controls, asset management, acceptable use, human resource, access controls, physical controls, and of course, operation management. So how do we compare the SOC 2 for privacy and the ISO IC 27701? We look at the SOC 2 for privacy. It has 50 points of focus covered in the 8 areas. Earlier it was 10. The aligned to the old GAP, which is generally accepted privacy principles in the past. Now it has been renamed to the Privacy Management Framework, which is aligned to HIPAA, GDPR, and CCPA controls. The trust services criteria is definitely aligned to the new requirements, right? And even the ISO IEC 27701, if you look at it, it's takes care of the design and privacy by design and privacy by default. Also has the PII controllers and the control requirements for the data handled by PII controllers mapped to the GDPR and the ISO standards. That's it. So now let's come to integrated approach and what are the factors, how we can do an integrated approach, and what are the advantages of doing an integrated approach. So the first advantage is better risk management. How so? Yes, because if you use integrated approach, you're going to use two of the best practices, which is the COSO risk framework and as well as the ISO standards of continuous improvement, or whatever is the standard they call now. And the coastal risk framework I would like to add is looking at the entire life cycle from assessment to monitoring to mitigation. If you look at the 300 controls in the SOC 2 trust services criteria, more than 100 controls are pertaining to risk management. What is being requested or asked for from the companies in terms of SOC 2 is they need to define a metrics of measurement as to all the controls, not just control objectives. Access control is not a control, it's a control objective. Access control, for example, may be applicable at across all the layers. At the physical layer, when you have people walking into the offices, right? Biometric controls, fingerprint controls. At the admin layers, at the network layer, for the firewall management and the network device management, you need to have at the OS layer, you need to have the access control at the application layer, at the session layer, at every layers. So access control, if you put in a risk assessment sheet, access control, and access control is managed, and control, yes, controls in place and risk mitigated, what we see in many organizations does not work in software, right? Many ISMS or the ISO 27001 audits that we have seen when we have been going and seeing doing the SOC 2 audits, they have a simple sheet of 10 controls, access controls, controls in place, policy in place, effective management in place, risk zero, low, mitigated, without defining what are the metrics that they will measure to put the control low, and the risk is already mitigated in the sheet. There's no monitoring happening, there's no performance happening, there's no evaluation happening, and risks are managed in the sheet in advance before even being implemented. So that's the irony in today's risk management that many companies do. And we have seen that, and we have asked when we do go and do the SOC 2 for those companies, when they say, no, I have an ISO already implemented and such big name has already done the risk management assessment for us. But we say the SOC 2 requires a better risk management, and an integrated approach helps the companies to take care of both of these best practices. This is advantage one. The advantage two is better planning and time management. So just to give you a background, that SCGS has recently become a certification body, and now we have started doing both the audits in one go. For one customer, our team from the SOC team and the ISO lead auditors both sit across with the companies and do one common audit. We have been doing joint audits with other certification bodies in the past. Majority of the big names we have covered, wherein we have gone together with the other certification bodies, done joint audits with them for large customers, for small SMB customers. But still, there have been issues like there have been two companies like the certification body earlier name and our name. Used to issue our SOC 2 report. The certification body used to issue theirs ISO AC certificate, and the companies still need to have had two companies to manage both the things, two different auditors coming from two different companies, even coming at the same time, but the aspects were different and companies were looking at different aspects, but they were looking at it, but it was still not a completely integrated approach, I would say. Of course, it was partially there. I wouldn't say 100% there, because sometimes we had to adjust to the certification body, and when we work on global environments, it used to become a challenge, because these large bodies have different companies within their global zones, and we have to coordinate with every other entity, every party within those companies. And having a one company doing one common audits leads to better planning, better time management, and of course, the costs will come later on. So this is what I have seen in the last couple of audits that we have done jointly for SOC 2 and ISMS for our customers. Our customers have definitely benefited, and our need for becoming a certification body was driven by our own customers who wanted us to do those ISO audits together with the SOC 2 audits. And of course, it has helped. This is the feedback we got from our clients, that having one company to do both definitely helps them a lot. Better coordination and team management. Yes, we just discussed this. The team management is definitely better. The coordination is definitely better. It leads to better compliance and third-party risk management. Now, if you look at the two of the standards, the same team or the common team doing sitting together and brainstorming that what is best for the two of the frameworks. Of course, the frameworks are aligned. If you see the trust services criteria, we will share with you the link. You can download. The TSC is mapped to ISO. Even the CCM controls is mapped to ISO. So SOC 2 is a leading standard, ISO is a leading standard, both put together for the requirement for privacy or data security. Definitely there's a lot of overlap, and these overlap can be integrated, and the same audit team can have auditing the controls in one go. We don't need to have a team from X auditor coming, another team for a Y auditor coming, both debating on the same issues. It definitely, if you go on the previous slide, it's better team management, better coordination, that one company, one auditor comes and does all the things together. We being a CPA firm, we have an advantage. We becoming a certification body also, we can do both the things in one go. Of course, if you, it's a choice of the customer, they want to continue with their certification body, we are more than happy to coordinate with any certification body of yours and do a SOC 2 with that certification body. We have been doing that for the last five years, but we also now have the option of doing this under our brand in one way, in one integrated approach. Right? We work with many consultants, many certification bodies worldwide. Most of our business comes from third-party references. We being an audit firm, right? We have limitations in terms of the consulting. We don't do consulting as an audit firm. We can't do consulting, so we rely on other certification bodies and other consulting bodies to get us business, and we have been working in as required under the AICPA mandates, under the ISO mandates, which talks of the independent standards and impartiality and everything. So all of those things we take care. And of course, there's another issue with vendor management. So dealing with one company helps even in vendor management. You don't need multiple NDAs, you don't need multiple people, you don't need multiple standards and dealing with multiple requirements in terms of AICPA and ISO compliance requirements and agreements which are required for insurance purposes, ISO mandatory purposes, and of course the AICPA purposes. So everything of that takes care. It streamlines everything. It makes easy for the companies to save time, to save their costs, which is our main objective, to save time and save cost. So in an integrated approach that we have done in the last few months, last 6 months, we did some audits for our SOC 2 clients where we did a integrated approach, and it definitely helped them to get the SOC 2 and the ISO certification in one go at the same time. When we have a continuous monitoring happening, we got our ISO lead auditors in the space, and they audited from an ISO perspective. We audited from, and of course, the other team audited from a SOC 2 perspective. And there was definitely 20 to 30% cost saving for our customers. Of course, that excludes the travel related and other costs in this whole thing. We have certain references now. I will share this. Nupur can share this on the chat, on the Q&A with everybody. These are some free references. The first one is a free download from AICPA. The trust services criteria is available for free download. You don't have to pay anybody. You don't have to engage a consultant to know what is the trust services criteria. This aligned to the ISO framework. The next is the paid SOC 2 guide. If you want to, you do that for your customers, for you, but it's a paid one, but I'm still giving the link. The third one is the Cloud Security Alliance Star. You have the CCM controls, which is available for free for download from the CSA site. The ISO IEC standards are, however, paid standards. The link is given here. You have to buy those standards. And we have a YouTube link where some of our videos are available for your view, which are mostly covering SOC 2 audits. You can view those things, videos. And this is finally the disclaimer from our side that whatever I said is our personal opinion. It is not specific to your company, and you cannot use this as a guidance to your company, but this is just a general in nature. If you need a specific guidance to your company, you have to engage with us. Our email ID is given here, info@sec2.io. We can definitely help you, but this session was overall guide and not specific to your company. And don't take this as a reference that we give you a specific professional advice. This is not a professional advice. This is general things happening in your industry. We are willing to give you a professional advice and professional proposal for your specific needs. For that, you will need to engage with us. Our ID is given here. If you have any questions now, we will take after the poll. I think the poll, we can take a quick poll and then we can have a QA session after this. Are you there, Nupur?
Yeah, the poll has started.
Okay.
So the majority answer is correct. Let's get to the next question.
So do only two from this, and the fourth one we have two. No, do it right now, all four together. Two third वाले में बाकी skip कर दो. The fourth. Yeah.
So the majority is right here as well. The answer is all of the above.
So if you're done with the polls, can we move to questions?
Yeah, we can move forward.
Sorry, because of time short, we had to cut down on a few poll questions. Uh, we apologize, but of course, let's do that question answer sessions. What is the first question?
So
Can, yeah, go ahead.
the first question, the first question is, can we issue SOC 1 and SOC 2 Type 2 reports for 3 months under exceptional situations?
Okay, so the answer to that is yes, that is possible. That is at the discretion of the auditor. We cannot sign an engagement letter in advance for 3 months because the 3 months is always at the discretion of the auditor. You can't take it for granted. No, I'll only do 3 months. It is not as per the EICP framework. The discretion is on the auditor. If he feels that there's enough maturity in the processes and in the controls, right? The 6 months of minimum period required can be reduced to 3 months in exceptional circumstances. The answer is yes, but the discretion is with the auditor. The company cannot insist on the auditor to take 3 months only. So I hope I've clarified that. The discretion is available to the auditor, not to the company. What is the next question?
So coming to the next question.
Yeah.
As SOC 2 is based on 5 trust services criteria, including privacy, so if the organization is certified with ISO 27001 and SOC 2, then does it require to go for ISO 27701? And if organization is certified for ISO 27001 and ISO 27701, then what value SOC 2 will add, as SOC 2 is separate from ISO?
Okay. So good question. So let me answer the first question first. So the first is that if organization is certified with ISO 27001 and SOC 2, then does it require to go for 701? So if the SOC 2 uh, in the SOC 2 there are five criteria, but it is not mandatory for you to go for all the five criteria, right? Like you can choose only security criteria, which is the common criteria with 300 controls. You need not choose the balanced four when you go for SOC 2. Then privacy is not mandatory in SOC 2. It is for you companies to choose. And if you're already certified for 27001 and privacy is not covered in SOC 2, then definitely it makes more sense for you to go for 27701 because privacy is anyway not covered in the SOC 2. So you will need to cover that somewhere. Either you cover in SOC 2 or 27701 or maybe both. Both is a better advantage rather than only one. Okay, that now we are coming to your second part of the question. If you're already certified for 27001 and 27701, which is for privacy, what SOC 2 will value add? Yes. Now the SOC 2 is based on the old gap, which is now the privacy management framework per se, right? Which many of these regulations have been based on the principles. So if you do your principles right, the seven secure privacy principles, right, by design, by default, and privacy for whatever are the seven privacy principles, the generally accepted. So AICP had its own principles which have been in use since the year 2008, and many of these regulations are have used those principles to make these frameworks. So if you are compliant with those principles per se, which are in SOC 2, you should be compliant to 70 to 80% of any privacy mandates which may come in future. So you are doing the basics of security, right? So if you have the 10 domains or 12 domains of security, right, in if you take the ISMS, if all the domains, right, well managed and well taken care of. So whatever is the new additional frameworks coming up for you for security, you should be compliant with that also. So SOC 2 for privacy helps you to do that. Today it is CCPA or GDPR or the Indian Data Privacy Bill. Tomorrow it may be any specific mandate. If your principles of privacy are covered, you should be able to comply with any specific mandate. That is a value you're giving. Secondly, we discussed that 27701 or any 27xxx standards does not report on operating effectiveness, right? If you see the way how 27xxx audits are done, the auditor comes, stage one audit is done, you have a policies in place, stage two audit is come, the number of days are calculated on based on the number of employees. They don't go in the depth sometimes, perhaps. Sometimes the auditors may have limited visibility in terms of their or privacy exposure. They will apply it within their thoughts, right? Whether they are doing privacy right or wrong, and they will certify you based on the stage one, stage two. Because privacy is a new thing, many people are still not comfortable, or they are not aware of how privacy is done, right? Many are few are certified and few are knowledgeable in the area of privacy, right? Despite that, they just take one day training and certify others also, which is, in my opinion, is not right. And in terms of best practices, so just because you have a certificate does not mean you are compliant. They're two different things. The SOC 2, because of its continuous monitoring, continuous evidencing every month, every quarter, has definitely more weightage in terms of your compliance mandates, in terms of privacy. And we have seen today that the privacy fines are in billions and millions today. So it's not an easy task, and it's not easy to say that if just because you're 27701 certified, you're compliant. They are two different things. We are looking at compliance more than certification, and that should be your objective, right? It's like living in a small hut and living in a building with strong foundation. Where would you like to live? Building with strong foundation where you can take care of tsunamis and earthquakes and even shakes to a certain extent, right? A hut will fly away in a wind of 100 200 kilometer speed, but a concrete structure will not. So you have to build your concrete structure in terms of cyber compliance, in terms of privacy compliance, and not just by a small house which can just fly away in terms of a small uh, uh, typhoon or something like that. So I hope I have answered your question. If there are more questions, I'm willing to take them now. You can put them in a chat, and I will answer them. If there are no more questions, then I think we can thank everybody. Vibhor.
I guess there are no more questions. I was waiting for a minute so that if there's anything else, we can come up with it. So I guess there are no more questions. So thank you everyone for joining in. We have another session on cloud security and CCM 4 controls on August 5th. The link has been shared in the chat box, in the Q&A box. You can register yourself and join us in that session too. Thank you everyone for your precious time. Thank you.
Thank you everybody for joining. Thank you everybody for joining, and we will close the session now. Vibhor. Let's close the session.